What's going on, y'all? Welcome back to another episode of the Struggle to Strength podcast, your source for real-life application on how to turn your struggles into strengths in all things mind, muscle, and money. I am your host, Josh Levine, and I am joined here virtually by my longtime friend and my co-host, Travis Hatch. And today, we are joined by the coach of coaches, Zander Fryer, who tells us the story of how he quit his 9-to-5 job where he was unfulfilled, unhappy, but getting paid a $250,000 salary. And he ended up building a 7-figure coaching business in just 1 year. We also dive deep into the details of why the modern education system is fucked. And we talk all about the shit you don't learn in college, which is also Zander's book and podcast that you can get now. Links are in the show notes. Basically everything you need to know to become the best version of yourself and build a badass business or really just help you reach any goals you're setting for yourself. Do not miss this episode. It is packed with highly valuable and easily applicable information. I promise you that. Before we get into it, we ask that if you love this episode, please give us 5 stars on Apple or a follow on Spotify. Share us on your socials. You can find me at Josh Levine Fitness, Travis at Travis Hawks Media. Links are in the show notes. And don't forget, you can also follow the podcast on Instagram. Tons of valuable clips on there for you to go check out and share. We really appreciate it. You can find us at Struggle2 Strength Pod. That's it. Buckle up because we got a great listen and massive value for y'all with Zander Fryer. So grab your notebooks. And we'll see you inside.
I didn't hate my job, right? It was actually a pretty good job. I was making great money. I mean, I was making over $200,000 a year. I drove a BMW. I lived in Venice. Like I had a pretty good job. I think deep down, I knew that it was not it for me. I think that was one of the big things for me is like, I think a lot of people really, really hated their gig. To be honest, I had a pretty damn good gig. And I think that's why, like I always tell people, I got really lucky, right? Like I was about like this far away from being a lifer. Right. And it's like, if somebody had given me a little bit of extra opportunity or a little bit more that I wanted, I would have, maybe gone down the path an extra 2 or 3 years and gotten like a managerial role. No way in hell am I becoming an entrepreneur. So I look back and I'm like, dude, I was pretty close to being like a mediocre, okay life person. But I think for me, some people say, a lot of people talk about how like, for something to change, you really have to hit like a rock bottom moment, right? Or like you have to be upset about enough or like uncomfortable enough with your current reality to make a change and do something different. For me, it was more so that like I got so much clarity around what I actually needed to accomplish that like the discrepancy between where I was and what I really wanted to do with my life felt like hell. Right. And so like most people, they're like, dude, you're making $200,000 a year. Like, I was probably working 35 hours a week, like completely autonomous, kid in his mid-20s. Like, so I like everybody else was like, dude, like you've got it. But like, I felt so because I identified as a world changer, a difference maker, someone who made millions, who ran their own business, who wanted to change the world. And I was like, there's no way that I'm ever going to do this while working at Cisco. So it was interesting. Now I feel amazing. Back then I was very conflicted.
Yeah, that sounds actually a lot like what we talk about this a lot. And you brought up a good point. And I've always thought as though people might need a rock bottom moment in order to actually change. Like you've got to get to a point where you're like, okay, it cannot get any worse. I might as well go for it. Something needs to change. But you and Travis seem really similar in that Travis didn't have a rock bottom moment. He was just sick of what he was doing and knew he could be doing better.
I think your rock bottom. Yeah. I think your rock bottom moment is relative
for sure.
Right?
Yeah.
So I had a buddy. I shouldn't say I had a buddy. I have a buddy. I have a buddy who runs a solar company, multi-million-dollar solar company, but 15 years ago, he was an alcoholic drug addict who was homeless on Skid Row in downtown LA. Right. And he used to tell me about how like, he's like, dude, like I probably quote unquote hit rock bottom like 3 or 4 times, like bounced on rock bottom before I realized what it was. And basically like the way he explained it, he's like, at one point I was homeless and I was doing drugs and alcoholic and all this stuff. And he was like implying that like he may have killed someone. I'm like, I don't really want to know about like this part, but let's keep going down this route because I'm really curious. So he was like, dude, there was like a lot of shit. And then he said like his rock bottom moment was when he had a blackout, like a drug induced alcohol blackout, and someone stole a picture of his mom that he had since he was 10 years old. Like he had spent time in jail. He was homeless for months. Like he may have killed someone. None of that was the rock bottom moment. It was when someone took a picture of his mom away from him while he was blacked out that he's like, I'm not drinking again. And he just quit right there. So it's interesting, like what that moment is for people, but it's always different.
Mm-hmm. That is an interesting point. And yeah, it is always different for people. And you might not even consider it a rock bottom. And, but it's enough to change your life. And it's enough to create an impact on you that you're like, okay, well, shit needs to change. And it might be like your buddy's situation, or it might be, you just know that you're capable of so much more. So what was it like making that transition? I mean, you quit your job, I imagine pretty abruptly.
Yeah. So I quit my job. So the story goes, I was successful at Cisco about 5 years, maybe 6. I can't even remember anymore. I had a conversation with a mentor of mine who was an entrepreneur, and he basically was like, dude, like, what are you doing with your life? Like, you could do anything. Like, what do you want to do? And he asked me the question, what would you do if you couldn't fail? And so that's actually the topic of my TED talk that I gave. But he asked me, what would you do if you couldn't fail? And I was basically like, honestly, like, I don't know what this means, but I'd like mentor and coach others full time. Like, I love mentoring. I love coaching people. I used to be an Air Force ROTC until I got a DUI and I got kicked out of the Air Force. That's another story we can dig into. But I was like, ever since I got kicked out of the Air Force, I just miss leading and mentoring other people. And he goes, well, dude, why don't you do that? And I go, well, I've got this amazing job. It pays me a ton of money. Like, like I've got all this momentum. I've got all this blah, 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 all the surface stuff that is the answer, the excuse for staying there. And this was actually my rock bottom moment. He goes, dude, just because you're good at something, does that mean you should do it? And he goes, Zander, do you know the difference between you and me? And I go, you make more money than I do, because he made millions at that time. And he goes, the difference between you and me is I'm actually living my dream. And ever since you got kicked out of the Air Force, you've just been dreaming one because you're a scared little kid. And it was this like, I had this like cocky confidence of success, and he just kicked me straight in the nuts. Like, you're just lying to yourself, dude. I can see through you. You're lying to yourself. And that was my rock bottom moment. So I was on a Saturday. Sunday, I couldn't stop thinking about it, because he went on to say, when you get to my age, the only thing you'll realize is number one resource that you can never get back is your time. And every moment off purpose is a moment wasted. And so that next Monday when I went to work, like 8 o'clock to 9 o'clock, I had my Disney team call. And then after that, I'm thinking, I'm never going to get that hour back. And then 9 o'clock to 10 o'clock, I'm thinking, I'm never going to get that hour back. 10 to 11, the sales call, I'm never going to get that hour back. 11 to 12. By the time it was lunch, I'm like, I'm never going to get that morning back. That morning is gone forever. And so I literally called up my manager and was like, Frank, I'm done. And he goes, dude, what the hell? Like, who gave you an offer? Where are you going? And I was like, I don't know. He goes, what do you mean you don't know? I'm like, dude, I don't know. And he's like, well, what are you doing? I go, I don't know what it is, but I know that it's not this. And I don't have any more time to waste not figuring it out. And so that was basically it. Like, I quit my job cold turkey, no idea what I was doing, but knowing that like I had to put all of my energy into actually figuring that part out.
That's powerful. I love him kicking you in the nuts like that.
Yeah. Right.
Yeah.
Was that a very like spur of the moment decision, or did it kind of go on for a long time? Because a lot of people get caught in that, they're like weighing the options. What should I do? What should I do? And like the two options I think that most people weigh is like, do I keep the job that I have and try to like develop something on the side with this guaranteed income? Or do I go all in? And for me personally, I only can operate on all in. Like, I have to be all in no matter what, because I can't be like, the idea of like working a job and then doing something on the side is just so unrealistic to me. Like, but Did you struggle with that concept, or like how?
I did struggle with it for a little bit. But basically, like exactly what you're talking about, man. For me, it was like, and I do think some people can build their thing on the side. Like we've had clients that have done it very, very well. I think the majority of people, here's the truth. The majority of you need to know who you are as a person, right? It's like when you get put under pressure, do you freeze or do you rise up? I knew that I was a rise up type of person, right? So I knew if I quit my job, I wasn't going to die. And if I'm not going to die and I'm not going to quit, well, then there's only one outcome, right? Success. Like it's going to happen. So when I looked at it that way, and my mentor, because of what he implanted in me, was like, the only resource, like you can get more money. I can make more money, right? The one resource I can never get back is my time. So at that point, I'm like, I will do anything in my power. I will buy back my time. I will quit my job. I will invest my savings. I will go into debt. I will do anything in my power to get my time back. Right. So that realization was huge for me. Now, I do think there are people, for example, if you're a freeze person, right? Well, the first thing is if you want to become an entrepreneur, you need to learn how to not be a freeze person, because if you're a freeze person, you're fucked. Sorry, pardon the language, but it's the truth, right? So you need to learn how to not be a freeze person. And you can go through a lot of self-development and work on that and become an entrepreneur. This is what we have to do with a lot of our clients at High Impact Coaching, right? Most coaches are phenomenal coaches because they love to serve. They love to help others. Most of them are terrible entrepreneurs, right? They're overthinkers. They're overanalyzers. Right. So and they hate money. So we have to teach them how to realize that money is just a tool to help them expand their impact, help them reprogram their subconscious, their beliefs, to realize that like you have to build a business first so that you can actually coach the clients. Right. You can't coach anyone if you can't sell anyone into your shit. So like we have to literally reprogram people's brains. And we do this with coaches, and you can do this. Whoever's listening to this, you can reprogram your brain. If you want to be an entrepreneur, but you don't feel like you have the mindset to do it, you can start to work on that. So that's kind of the first thing, is you have to realize that like you can't be a freeze person, right? Now, if you are a freeze person, start working on that and then do it on the side, right? And I do think that'll work for some people. But just like you mentioned, Travis, like you're at a disadvantage. You're handicapped because you're only going to be partially focused on that, which means majority of your focus is going to go on your 9 to 5. So this is always going to get a half-ass effort, right? And nothing great ever gets built half-ass. So at some point, you're going to have to make the leap. And most people, right, the thing that we hear all the time is, I want to replace my 9 to 5 income so that I can then make the leap. And I'm like, that does happen. But most of the time, that's just because you're scared, right? You're just scared to go after what you really love. Right. And it's like the whole, like, it's like, like when I hear people say, like, I'll invest in coaching once I've made the money so that I have money to invest in coaching. I'm like, that's the stupidest shit I've ever heard. Right. Like, what is wrong with you? Are you serious? Right. Like, it doesn't work that way. Right. Hey, it's like a real estate, company or something, like a mortgage company. You're like, well, why don't you give me the house first? Right. Give me the house first, and then I'll give you the loan, like the down payment. How about that? You give me the house and then I'll go get some cash. And then like, no, it doesn't work that way. Right. Like you have to invest first to get the outcome. So yeah, I think, people can do it on the side. I think if you're really serious about it, like for me, it was like, I realized it's not going to kill me and I'm not going to quit till I figure it out. So I just had to jump.
Yeah. And the point you make about time, like time keeps on coming up. And the people who, once I have enough money to invest in coaching, then I'll hire you on for coaching. You're just wasting time. Like which is more valuable than money. You think that you spending more time to make the money that you need to invest in coaching, which is going to help make you the money faster, is the way to go. The time's going to go by one way or another. I'm all about buying my time back, investing in ways that are going to help me get a return faster and progress faster and grow faster. So if it costs a little bit of money up front, I'm okay with it. I know I'm going to come out better, but I think that might be like a learned entrepreneurial mindset for a lot of people.
we discuss this. So in my book, Shit You Don't Learn in College, we talk about, how backward the education system and what it needs to be. And one of the things that we hit on is like the simple fact that right now our education system is so messed up, because one of the things that they do is like they make you decide the direction of your life when you're 17 years old, right? Let's think about this for a second. Did either of you guys know what you wanted to do or be in life at 17? Because I was just worried.
I don't know,
dude. I was worried about where the next party was and the cute girl in Spanish, right? And I decided that engineering was going to be a great career, right? So, first of all, that's hilarious to me, right? There was just another side note. There's a study that was done by the Federal Reserve that found that 61% of people that go get their college degree, 61% of people that have gotten their college degree, so almost 2/3, would like to go back and either change their degree to something they were more passionate about or just not get a degree at all. 2/3 of people, right? So, now we go through this whole thing where we go get a college degree. I spent $120,000 on student loans to make it through UCLA because I'm not from a wealthy family, right? And now I come out of college and I have this massive loan for a job that is not really aligned with me, that I don't really care about, and I have to work my ass off. Now, I was lucky enough that I made great money, so I paid that shit off in about 4 years. Most people were not lucky enough to make as much as I did. So they're left paying that over the course of 15, 20 years. And we wonder why people are scared to invest in themselves. It's because the entire system has led people to believe, give us hundreds of thousands of dollars and then you're screwed for the rest of your life. That's the big issue.
I mean, yeah. And it's kind of like, if you were like, oh, I've got some money saved up and I really want to invest in the stock market, and the first thing you do is you put it all into like one company that fails and you lose everything. So then you're like, oh, yeah, well, I got to keep my money in cash because this whole thing is
the whole thing doesn't work. This whole thing doesn't work.
You just have to learn how to actually invest your money like in a smart way,
Yeah.
It's literally the same exact thing.
I think that's the big thing, right? Is like we talk about this in the book, but like our brains, most people don't realize this, but our brains are 95% subconscious, right? So like, I hate to break it to you guys if you didn't know this, but like each of you are only 5% of a real person. The rest is basically computer program, right? Yeah. And that program is being programmed by society, by media, by culture. And we go through an emotional experience like that. And it creates this deep, deep programming that then runs the rest of our life, right? But that programming isn't necessarily truth. We just create it as truth. So if we don't know how to unprogram that 95% of our brain, that stupid program is going to run the rest of our life.
Yeah, and that's such a good. I had never really thought about it in that way, but it's like ingrained in people. The idea, maybe it's like, oh, your parents got burned. Oh, I got burned. So then the idea of investing in education equals like you're gonna get fucked. You're gonna get
exactly
fucked over.
Yeah.
No, not at all.
Or just investing in anything. I mean, we've talked to some people and I forget who said this, but when Travis, you brought up the stock market, it's like the best thing that can happen to you when you start investing money in the stock market is you lose a little bit of money. Because if you lose a little bit of money, you don't feel hurt. You're not afraid to do it again. If you lose a ton of money,
but you're going to be cautiously aware.
You're going to go learn. If you lose a ton of money, you're going to be like, exactly like we said, this shit's broken. It never works. Fuck this. I'm never doing it again. And then if you make a ton of money, well, then you're just going to get greedy, right?
You think it's all daisies and rainbows, and then you go for swing for the fences, and then you get screwed.
You lose everything. Yeah.
Yeah.
So I think there's ways to obviously get more comfortable with investing, but you're right. I mean, I never thought of it that way. We've been conditioned to be afraid of it. So, I mean, how do you fix that? How do you
the conditioning?
Yeah.
Oh, okay. We're digging deep on this one, guys. So again, I can cover as much as I can. Can I give like an exercise to do on this call? Would that be helpful?
Let's do it. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, awesome.
Right. So I am going to preface this with like we have a ton of these exercises in the book, but I'm going to give you guys one to do right now that I think is really important. So the first thing that I tell people is, in order to unprogram and reprogram the subconscious mind, you have to understand how it became programmed to begin with. So the subconscious is programmed by two things. Number one is repetition, and number two is emotion. Okay. So if you think about it, right, like you're growing up and your parents tell you money doesn't grow on trees over and over and over again, you start to be really scarce with your money. Or, whatever it might be. No, you can't do this. No, you can't do that. You start to develop either a hindrance from trying anything or a rebellion against anybody who tells you no, right? From this subconscious, people telling you no. There was a study that was done in Germany with pike and baitfish. Do you guys know what pike are? Like big, ugly, like carnivorous fish. And so they put a pike in a big aquarium with a bunch of bait fish, and the pike would normally eat the bait fish, right? But they put it in with a big piece of glass in between the two. And they put them both in, and the bait fish start freaking out. The pike just starts going headlong into the piece of glass, like boom, boom, boom. But obviously it hits this thing so hard, it like stuns itself. And then it goes again, it stuns itself. And it does that for about half an hour until it realizes like this shit is going nowhere and this really hurts, right? And so it stops and it just starts swimming in a circle, and the bait fish starts swimming in a circle. And so they took the piece of glass out from in between them. And what do you think happened?
That's interesting.
Nothing.
Yeah.
Nothing happened. So the pike gave up on trying to eat the bait fish to the point where they left it and it died. It died, even though it had food in the fish tank. Because it programmed its brain, the animalistic part of its brain, which is the 95% of our brain, it programmed itself to think it would die if it kept going after the bait fish, right? So repetition is the first thing that programs our subconscious. The second thing is emotion, right? So like Travis was just talking about, like if you have a really emotional loss of an investment, or you invest in your college degree and it ends up being a shit show and it takes you years to get it back, that's really emotional. So it only has to happen once for you to have a really deep programming. I always tell people, like, do you guys remember where you were when you found out about 9/11?
Vaguely, yeah.
Yep.
Yeah. Josh, where were you?
I was in my 7th grade classroom at Cole Junior High.
I was too.
They wheeled the TV in.
So like, do you see how like the details you remember from that?
Yeah.
How weird is that? That's not something you were talking about yesterday, but like it was so emotional. Like that moment was so emotional for most of us that we'll forever remember that moment. Mm-hmm. Right. And that's because it was emotional. So the repetition of things and the emotion of things is what creates these deep grooves. So the first thing that we got to do is we got to go find what these deep grooves are, like where they came from. Right. And in order to do that, we actually use a series of questions. I don't think I've ever shared these questions publicly. We normally reserve these just for our clients and in my book, but I'll walk through them with you guys right now because it's really powerful. So basically we tell people to ask yourself, number one, what's a belief that you have that doesn't serve you? Right. So we just ask them straight up, like, what's a belief that you have that doesn't serve you? And I always tell people, right, the first thing you have to realize is, are your beliefs true? Right? Anybody ever had a belief that turned out not to be true?
Oh, yeah.
Of course, right? At one point, everybody on the face of the earth thought that the earth was flat. Didn't make it any more true, right? So we all have these beliefs, these programmings that are not true, but we've created them to keep us safe. So I ask people, what's a belief that you have that's not true? Or sorry, what's a belief that you have that doesn't serve you? Right. And so we've all created these beliefs that might not serve us. For the coaches that we work with, we help coaches build profitable businesses, and a lot of them might be just starting and they're scared to maybe charge premium prices. They think just because they're starting off, they can't charge $3K, $4K, $5K for their services. So it might be, I'm not good enough to charge, $5K for my services. Right. And so it's a belief that's not true, or a belief that doesn't serve you. Then we ask them, well, what's the benefit of this belief that you've created? Because there's always a benefit, right? You created it. And most of the time it's some form of self-preservation. It's some form of safety, right? So why would a coach believe that they can't enroll clients at $5,000? Well, because it prevents them from having to go out and try and potentially fail, hear no's, feel rejection, right? Rejection is one of the deepest negative emotions that we can feel. It's closely tied to the emotion of shame. Right. So shame, according to David R. Hawkins, is the lowest energetic state a human can feel before death. That's not that great. Right. So rejection, we wonder why we fear rejection and failure and social outcasting and criticism and judgment so much. right? You look at evolutionary man, right? To be rejected and to be outcast meant you would die, right? If you're in a small community of 100 and you get outcast, you're going to get eaten by a saber-toothed tiger, right? Are there saber-toothed tigers in the bathroom right now? Not so much. So we don't have to worry about that. But we still feel that fear so drastically that, we want to keep self-preservation. We don't want to be rejected. We don't want to hear no. So what is the belief that you've created, and what is the benefit of keeping it? Why did you create it? Most of the time, it's to keep you safe, to keep you comfortable, to keep you from your fears, whatever it might be. And then you have to ask yourself, what is this belief costing you? Right? What is this belief actually costing you? For our coaches that we work with, what's costing them hundreds of thousands or millions of dollars? Right? It's also costing all of the people, all the people that they're setting out to impact and change their lives. Right. So when they start to see the contrast between, this is basically creating that rock bottom moment that we were talking about. Right. So they see the contrast between, why they have this belief and what it's costing them. They're like, oh shit, we got to change this. So then we always ask ourselves, do you want to keep this belief? And that way, so this question kind of helps you consciously, that 5% of your brain, make the conscious decision, I'm not going to let this unconscious program run anymore. Right? So do I want to keep this belief? The answer should be no. So after you're clear that you don't want to keep this belief, then basically you start to create a new and opposite belief to replace that belief. And so to create the new and opposite belief, it's pretty simple. You basically just say, well, what's the reality that you want to be experiencing? Right. For our coaches, it might be, I want to easily be enrolling 5K clients, not feel like a salesy D bag, whatever it might be. So that's what they want to be experiencing. Well, what's a belief that you have to believe to allow that reality to come true? Well, I have to believe that I'm calm and confident and my services are worth $50,000. So when I ask 5K, people are ready and willing to say yes, and they know that it's going to be worth the value, right? So they have to create this new belief, and then they go create a visualization or an affirmation around it, right? So literally, we're all familiar with visualizations and affirmations now. Like if you're not doing them, that's your choice, right? We all know that like Olympic level athletes, the reason they're so successful is they visualize the outcome first. They affirm the outcome first. So the language that we use programs our subconscious mind. So if every morning I'm waking up and I'm saying, I love my clients. My services are worth $50,000. So when I offer them a 5K, when I offer them a 5K opportunity to work with me, they're jumping at the opportunity to say yes and pay me that 5K and thanking me, right? And I'm putting that as an affirmation that I'm reading every day. And you do that for 30 days. The next time you get on a phone call, like you're gonna feel that, and they're gonna feel that, and it's gonna happen. So.
That's powerful.
And that's where, those affirmations, if you think about it, those affirmations are repetition and emotion coming back to force out that old belief.
Yep. That's massively powerful and super beneficial because I started in sales before I was a coach. I grew up in sales essentially. And so it was never really challenging for me. I know it's challenging for a lot of coaches, but still, there's always seemed to be a hesitancy to charge more money for some reason, especially among coaches. I agree. And once you can believe that your service is worth, 5-10x what you're charging. Yeah, dude, it's like, you're doing them a favor. Like the client needs you.
It's also amazing because whenever we obviously we work with a lot of coaches, and every time we double or triple or 10x their prices, they don't realize the belief that we've helped shift people is like, you're not increasing your prices for you. Yes, there's a benefit for you because you get to make more money, and that means you get to expand quicker. You have more money for marketing, more, bringing on team members, all of that sort of stuff. But also when somebody pays, let's say you have clients paying you $300, the hassle factor, the bullshit factor that they have to, they're terrible clients. They don't show up. They don't do the homework. Right. And so they don't get results. And then you go from $300 to $3,000, and all of a sudden that same person is 10 times as committed. They're an easier client. They do the work. They show up on calls. They push themselves out of their comfort zone, and they get results.
Mhm.
So you're actually raising your prices for them, not for you. But
Mhm.
you pretend that you're doing it for them because you're actually just scared. You're just scared of somebody perceiving you as a salesperson or criticizing you for asking more money. When the reality is, like, if you got your own ego out of the way and realize, like, I will gladly have people say, oh, Zander charges too much, right? Because I don't care. I know I don't charge too much. Everybody that goes through our program tells us that it's worth 10 times what we charge, right?
Mhm.
So anybody can tell me that, right? Because it doesn't hurt my ego, right? So you got to let that go and realize, like, I'm charging for them. There's a reason we get such great results with people, and it's because they're so damn committed that, like, when we give them the perfect systems, like, they're going to follow the systems.
Yep. And you get better, like you said, you get better clients. You know,
Yeah.
nobody wants to be charging like bottom of the market prices and be $20 more than like the other guy. Cause at that point they're just going to go with whoever's lowest.
Yep.
And so, yeah, these are important strategies to identify and work on when you're building your business, not only for your own sanity, but like for your clients as well. You're like you said, you're quite literally helping them.
It's not about like I'm not flying around in private planes and driving Lamborghinis and shit. Like, my money goes back into like building team and testing new strategies. And like I'm putting it into this industry to help more coaches do amazing shit.
Yep.
Right. So it's like, but to do that, you have to make money. So we got to get over that shit.
Yeah. You got to make money to spend it. And then you got to spend it to make it.
Yep. 100%, man.
Yeah. So you left corporate and went straight into coaching people. Is that basically what you did?
I guess we just skipped the whole middle part, didn't we?
Yeah. There was it happened really fast. I know it happened really fast. So let's give I'll give you the broader look at it. So I quit my job, no idea what I was doing. Spent the next 3.5 months just investing heavily into myself. Right. So just like we were talking about, I probably invested about $45,000 into different coaching, mentorship, masterminds, everything I could get my hands on. The last 25K of that was completely on credit cards. So I had about 20K. Everybody's always like, yeah, but Zander, you made so much money. So you had this stockpile of cash sitting around. Guys, I'm a millennial. Like, you really think I had money sitting around? Hell no. Right. So like I had about 20K saved up. I spent all of that in the first 30 days. And then over the next 2 months, I spent another 25K on credit cards to just learn these systems. And Travis, I love what you said earlier, because like, I remember investing in a mastermind that was 12K and it was crap. Mm-hmm. Like, it was horrendous. Mm-hmm. It was strategies from like 2012. The coaching and support was non-existent. Right. But what I always tell people is, like, if I were to go back and do it again, that'd be the first mastermind that I invest in. And people are like, are you crazy? I'm like, a little bit. Yes, you have to be an entrepreneur. But I was basically like, it gave me the opportunity for two things. Number one, it gave me the opportunity to learn what I never wanted to be as a coach, right? I never wanted to be that person. And number two, it gave me the opportunity to face that moment that Travis was talking about, the big loss, and have the balls to go do it again. Right. So I had to face that loss. And even though that was my first mastermind that I put on a credit card, so I was already out of cash, right? That was my first mastermind that I put on a credit card. And to go continue to invest in coaches and masterminds, I invested in a couple more after that. And that really completed the combination, the proverbial combination lock for me. And the door swung open about 3.5 months in. I made my first 13K in a month, 3.5 months in. And I was about 2 or 3 weeks away from not being able to make rent. And literally within that time made 13K. The next month made 17K. Then it was like 24K, 32K, 40 something K. So built that up. I had my first 100K month as a life coach, if you bet, but 100K month as a life coach within 12 months. And then we obviously at that point had a lot of other coaches that were like, what the hell are you doing? Like, I've been trying to build a coaching business for the last 5 years, and you did in 5 months what I couldn't do in 5 years. So I was like, hey, why don't we test this out with you? And it worked. And so we started working with other coaches, and that's where we are now with High Impact Coaching. We've worked with over 750
helped over 750 coaches build 6-figure, multiple 6-figure, and 7-figure businesses. And that's the big thing that we're focusing on now.
That's phenomenal, man. I mean, I think the most important thing that at least I picked up on that it sounds like you did was you mentioned the word systems. And I think so many people, when they want to start building anything, tend to just wing it, or they figure it out as they go. And that's okay. It's a way to start. But until you learn how to systemize your process, if you can't explain how you're getting clients, if you can't explain how you're coaching clients, and if you can't explain any part of your process, then you're not going to be successful. So what systems do you think helped you, or what processes helped you most in this really quick ascension to success?
Well, I think you kind of just hit it on the nose. I think you really have to have both, though, right? You have to have, I call them the big cojones actions, right? You have to have the balls to like just take those actions, even if you don't have the systems, because that's what entrepreneurship is. You have to be willing to, you have to be a leader. You have to go first when there is no system, right? I think my zone of genius is taking something really complex. I was an engineer in college, right? So my zone of genius is taking something really complex and then breaking it down into the pieces of like what made it work. Right. So it's almost like you're asking me like, what are the systems? I would say like the systems I've learned to create systems. Right. So it's like, I'll go do the thing. I'll go be the guy that climbs Mount Everest first. Right. And then like reflect on that process and be like, okay, here's how it worked and why it worked. And if we wanted to replicate this, here's what we're going to need to do. Right. So I think that's really important because it is, a lot of us need systems to get somewhere. One of the things that I always tell all of our clients is if you need 100% of the system laid out for you, you belong in a 9-to-5.
Yeah, for sure.
There's no way around it. If you have to have every step laid out in front of you, you belong in a 9-to-5. Right. If you can get somebody to give you 80 or 60 or like 50% of the framework, and you can start to figure out the rest from there, you're an entrepreneur, right? But Josh, just like you mentioned, it's like, go get the 50 or 60 or 70 or 80% framework first and then work from there, right? Because most people, just like you mentioned, they start to go from ground zero, right? And I was like, I don't want to work. I'm going to go get the systems from other people and get myself 80% of the way there. And I'm going to get this system and this system and this, and I'm going to put them all together. I'm going to make my own system. Right. And then I'm going to launch from that point. Right. And that's what allowed me to launch so quickly. Everybody's like, dude, how'd you launch your business? And you're like, you must be some sort of genius. Like, you guys, in second grade, I was the dumb kid. I took an IQ test and an aptitude test, and I was the bottom 10%. Right. So like that's saying something here, right? You don't have to be the smart kid. You just have to be a critical thinker, really.
Yeah. And I would add, like, not even just you're going to belong in a 9-to-5, but you're going to belong in a low to mid-level 9-to-5 job at a large corporation. You're never going to make it in.
You don't have to twist the knife so much, man. Like, I'm feeling it right now.
I don't mean that in an offensive way. I mean it in a way of like, if you're trying to figure out, before you need to, in my opinion, before you need to worry about like learning all these different skills or whatever, it's the ability to take any situation, break it down, quickly figure out the steps and the solution on your own.
Yeah.
That's going to get you the management role, the VP role, or the entrepreneurial. Because this is really the only thing that matters.
This is literally the stuff that the shit they don't teach you in college. In college, they teach you what to think.
They don't teach you the opposite.
They don't teach you how to think, right? So I don't know if you guys are familiar like with where our education system came from. But so we have something in the world today called objective-based learning, right? So objective-based learning is all about producing a single outcome, right? So if you go all the way back to ancient Greece, and like Plato and Socrates, they had something called the trivium, right? And the trivium was designed to create individual thinkers. It was designed to create individual contributing members of society. And it was based on the idea of teaching people how to think, not what to think, how to think. And people would spend decades mastering the 3 major pillars of the trivium. It's grammar, logic, and rhetoric. Grammar was the ability to learn on your own, right? Pretty simple. Logic was the ability to reason on your own. Rhetoric is the ability to critically think, critically question your intake, and then re-deliver what you've critically thought and questioned, right? So pretty simple. This is how to think. And people would literally spend decades mastering these three things, right? Now, if you fast forward to ancient Rome, which is a militaristic, imperialistic society built on soldiers and military, what makes a terrible soldier? Someone who learns on their own, someone who reasons on their own, and someone who critically questions everything that they're given, right? But what makes a phenomenal entrepreneur? Someone who learns on their own, someone who reasons on their own, and someone who critically questions everything, right? So the militaristic educational approach that Rome created is what we now use in America today. And it was brought back by the Industrial Revolution. While we're not creating, military to take over the world, we're creating little economic armies with corporations, right? That's what they are. We're creating cogs in a wheel, and the whole education system is designed to create these little soldiers for our economic armies, right? But over the last couple of decades, we're realizing more and more that shit doesn't work, right? Like everybody's unhappy. Forbes had a study that they found like 87% of all people in 9-to-5s, 87%. That's 7 out of 8. 87% of people in 9-to-5s are unhappy, disengaged, and depressed, stressed, or anxious in their jobs. They don't want to be there. 1 out of 8 people are actually happy in a 9-to-5. That's crazy to me.
That sounds terrible. That's why I left.
Right? That's nuts.
It's really interesting to hear your explanation of like where our education system came from. Because when we were just talking about, 9-to-5ers generally being the people who need like 95 to 100% of the system or of the process. And then you're talking about being able to learn and reason on your own and then question everything around you. It's like, if you have all three of those things, then you're likely a great entrepreneur. But to be a really successful, high tier manager at a company, you still likely need to be able to learn and reason on your own.
You still need all of those. You still need all of those things.
Yeah. You at least need to question things a little bit. Maybe not like excessively. You still need to buy into the culture of your company and whatnot. But like, you still need to be able to do those things. So we're getting royally fucked by the education system for a long time.
Yeah.
And to put it like in an analogy, basically, like if you're in a position and you have someone like your manager tell you like, hey, could you go do this? And your initial reaction is like, how do I do that? Or could you explain how to do that? How do you want me to do that? Like you're not going to get to that position. If that's what you want, you need to learn how to be able to be like, okay, I have absolutely no idea how to do that, but I will get back to you. I'll go figure it out and I'll get back to you.
The term I always use is everything is figure outable.
Yeah. Yep.
Right. And I think that like, if you actually embody that, like you can accomplish a lot of amazing things.
It's funny. I always say I'm like known, I think among a lot of my coaches and friends as being the guy who's like, it's going to be fine. Like it's always going to be fine. They're like, dude, I don't know what you're talking about. This is really serious. I'm like, yeah, but we're going to figure it out. It's going to be fine.
Yeah.
To almost a fault where I'm like, dude, it doesn't like shit's really on the line. We're deep in the red. I'm like, it's going to be fine.
It's going to be fine. But I love that mentality. Yeah. You got to be a little bit realistic. Like, we got to take some action and we got to go fix it. It's not like,
of course,
it's going to be fine and then pretend nothing's wrong, but it's going to be fine. Let's get into action. Right. But I like it's funny because like if you're listening to this podcast, right? If you're listening to this podcast right now, I'm going to let you in on a little secret. For all the hard shit that you've been through, you've survived every single one of the things. You haven't, well, I'm hoping that nobody's listening to this and they're dead yet, but you haven't died yet. Of all the things that you've been through, you have survived them. You have figured it out one way or another. So what's the history that you're drawing on that's saying that you're not going to figure out the next thing?
Yep.
Right. And you haven't died. You haven't died yet. You're good.
I talk about this all the time, man. I think there's there's a need for humans to place ourselves into situations that are uncomfortable, that are challenging, and that may result in failure. And there's a need for us to fail on some level, right? Obviously we need to learn from those failures, but the fact that you've been through all that shit, and I know, like, reading your bio, I know you've been through some hard times. I know I've been through some hard times, and I talk about them quite often, that like they have made me such a resilient motherfucker that like I'm not afraid of doing shit that's going to put me into a compromised position, because I know I can get out of it. Now, I might be a little bit hesitant and think twice about some things, depending on where I am mentally and where I believe I may end up. It might be scary. Doesn't mean I'm not going to do it. I'm still here.
And obviously, like, this is the whole idea of struggle to strength, right? It's like, if you go through that, I always equate it to like, I equate it to like going to Vegas if the odds in Vegas were actually in your favor. Yep. Right. So let's say if instead of like the odds being 5% in favor of Vegas, they were, 5% in the favor of you. Right now, every time you go take a risk, AKA make a bet, there's a pretty significant chance that you're going to lose and a pretty significant chance that you might win. Over the course of time, you're actually going to win more than you're going to lose. Right now, if you sit on the sidelines and you don't play any games, you're not going to know how to play the game and you're not going to win. Mm-hmm. Right. You might keep your chips, but you're not going to grow your stack. Right now, if you go, so let's say you got 10 chips and you go bet one chip at a time, right? You're going to win some, you're going to lose some. You do it slowly a little bit, and you might start to build your stack because the odds are actually in your favor. Right. Mm-hmm. We think that they're not, but they are in our favor. The more you play the game, the more you start to learn the game, the more you start to build your chip stack. Now you got 20 chips. So now you start to bet 2 at a time. All right. Same thing. You start to win some, you start to lose some. Right. But over the course of time, now it becomes 30, 50, 100 chips. By the time you've got 100 chips, right, this is the equivalent of like, we've definitely lost some chips. We've been through the struggle, but we calculatedly know when it's a really dangerous situation and when it's just kind of like our head getting in the way. Right. Yeah. So now you start to play the game better and the odds get more in your favor, 10%, 20% in your favor, 30% in your favor. And you start to bet bigger. 20 chips, 30 chips, 50 chips at a time. When people are like, Zander, how the hell did you just quit your whole job at like out of nowhere? Well, I'll be honest, up to that point, I had fucked up a lot of shit, right? I'd broken a lot of stuff and I had never died up to that point. I'd gotten a DUI, I'd gotten kicked out of this, I'd taken big risks. I was always the kid in, growing up that was like, the idiot jumping off of cliffs with his bike and like doing that. And I never died, right? I probably should have, to be honest, now that I look back, but like, I learned a lot, but I never actually died. So I was playing this game of poker, this inverse Vegas, if you will, for many years before I went to the point when I was just like, screw it, I'm all in on this situation and I'm dropping my job and I'm going after this thing. Because at that point I knew the game very well. Right. And at this point I could tell that I was going to win this hand. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. I was kind of the same way. I did a lot of fucked up shit and I fucked up a lot of things. And I got hurt a lot. Knocked myself out a lot, like did a lot of dumb shit, but like, I'm still here. I learned a lot from that. And 2 things on what you were just saying. One, if you're sitting there holding your chips because you're afraid to play, you're still, like, in my opinion, you're still falling behind because everyone else is getting ahead. You're just watching everybody else
is playing.
Everybody else is playing. Learning, getting more chips, and your 10 chips are starting to be valued at less and less and less because everyone else is making more and more and more.
Inflation in this game is crazy, just like the real world.
If you do not make a move, you're falling behind. You're getting worse.
Yeah.
So make a move, take a risk, get better. And the other thing is, while we're talking about gambling, while we're talking about making an investment, I think a lot of people. We can get into Bitcoin.
maybe another time. Maybe another time, guys. Maybe another time.
We can get it. We'll get Jimmy Song back on here. We'll talk about Bitcoin again. But no, as far as like investing in yourself, man, I think a lot of people think of making an investment as like a gamble, and to a very, very small extent. Maybe it is your $12,000 that you lost when you signed up for a bullshit mastermind. You'll never get that back. Okay. But for the most part, if you know who you're signing up with, if you are signing up with a coach who has proven results and who is clearly more in a position better to help you than you are yourself, it's not a gamble. All you have to do is fucking execute.
Yeah. And I think, well, to be honest, I think the other thing too is your perception of it, right? Like when I went through that program, I was livid. I was livid by the end of it. This was the worst investment I've ever made, right? Because I couldn't see the benefits that I got from that investment, but I can now, right? Mm-hmm. 4.5 years later, I look back in that and I told like what I considered the worst investment at the time. I look back and I'm like, I'm so glad I did that because the lesson that I learned there has made me millions up to this point. Right. I look back at the $120,000 that I invested in school. Right. And I'm like, okay, it didn't get me the outcome I wanted, but did I get $120,000 worth of value out of it? Probably. I mean, it was 4 years of like the best experience, meeting friends, hanging out with people, like while I didn't, like obviously I learned how to be an engineer and I didn't use that long-term in my career. Just like we just talked about, I learned the engineering mindset of taking something really complicated and making it really simple. So is there $120,000 worth of value in that? Of course. Some of my best friends are my college buddies that like, they came to my wedding. They'll go on these trips with me in the future. I'll invest with them. I'll build companies with them. Right. So I look at it now and I'm like, it was worth it. But like when you're $120,000 in debt, you're like, that was the stupidest shit ever.
Dude, I like that perspective.
That perspective is like, that's so key for like a winning mentality too. Yeah. I think because even just think about, not even just monetarily, but think about someone who has absolutely no one in their life, no friends, nothing. How much would they pay to even just have a handful of friends? Even nothing, no sort of return on investment there at all. Yeah. But how much would they pay to just have, you know what I'm saying? So like
just companionship, community. Yeah.
Yeah. If you can put yourself in that mindset, like there's always a good aspect.
Like most of the time when we go through something bad, we don't realize that it's actually good for us, right? Like we talked about, I got my DUI and I got kicked out of the Air Force, right? When I was 21 years old, I wanted nothing more than to fly F-22s, right? That was my dream. And to this day, I still have a regret that I didn't get to serve in the military. But I look at my life now, 10 years later, and I'm like, wow, what a blessing. Mm-hmm. Right? Like I would have been halfway through a 20-year career in the Air Force. My life dictated for me, like definitely not having the impact that I'm having right now. Right. So it's like that one thing that in the moment was the worst thing that had happened in my life up to that point. Right. Mm-hmm. Was actually a blessing.
Yeah. And I think it can be hard to do that. Do you find that you still, at this point when things don't go the way that we anticipated or that you anticipated, do you still find yourself kind of sitting in it a little bit, or are you like, oh, of course, no, this is supposed to happen? Are you the expert?
If by sitting in it, yeah. If by sitting in it, you mean like bawling like a 6-year-old girl, then the answer is yes. Like, yeah, that's just hard, man. I've been doing deep psychosomatic work for the last 5 years and clearing out past traumas and all of this stuff. But every time something happens, there's going to be stuff that comes up. And it's really what's important is like you allow yourself to go through that, and then like down the line, you have to trust that like down the line, this is, it's the whole Byron Katie thing. Like this is happening for me, not to me. Now, when you're face down in the mud and somebody's peeing on your back, right? Like that's it. You're like, how is this for me? Like, there's no way that this is for me. But like, I think maybe, I always tell people I used to watch way too many Disney movies growing up. So whether, I always tell people you have to have faith, right? I'm not talking about religion. I'm not talking about dogma. I'm talking about faith, right? You have to have faith that in the end, good wins. In the end, you go through your struggle and it creates a better, stronger, bigger, more impactful, more purposeful version of you, right? I personally think that I just watched too many Disney movies, right? Because every Disney movie follows the hero's journey, right? Like you have to go down into the pit of despair. You have to go through your trials and tribulations, and you come out the other side, and you come out, this amazing person, right? But if you don't go through the pit of despair, well, first of all, it would make a really shitty Disney movie, so nobody would watch it, right? So, and you're also not going to learn what you need to learn to become the person you need to become. So it's really hard to see it when you're in the thing. So when you're, lying on your floor, crying your ass off, and you don't know what's going on, just remind yourself that this is going to make a really cool Disney movie one day.
This is like flashbacks to heroes doses of like psilocybin. You want to go through your own Disney movie? 5 grams of mushrooms will get you there. I'm not recommending that.
That'll do it, man.
I am not recommending that to anybody who's listening, but yeah, that's it's important to be able to learn a lot about yourself. And yeah, you got to go through shit to get there. Sometimes it's just the unfortunate part of growing into a better person.
Well, if you're not going through the shit, you're probably not trying hard enough.
Yeah. If you're not falling, you're probably not trying hard enough. I used to say that in snowboarding all the time. Yeah. It's half the time I knocked myself out. I was like, I'm just trying. I'm just trying.
Maybe don't go that hard, because if you get enough concussions, then yeah.
Yeah, I don't have CTE, so I think we're good there. But
all right,
good. No, you got to be able to learn and adapt and grow and reflect, I think, is probably the most important thing that we've been talking about today in building your systems and building the people around you and building your business and your life. It's being able to reflect and double down on what works and what you like, and just continue to do that over and over and over again. And just like the poker chip analogy, I mean, you'll end up with more and more chips and more greatness around you, but you got to start.
Yeah. So, got to get moving.
Yeah. So, man, Travis, are we coming up on an hour? Or can we keep going?
Yeah. We're at about an hour.
God damn it. I feel like that was 15 minutes.
I know.
I didn't even realize we started recording yet, guys.
He's like, is this on yet?
Hello, testing.
We've just been shooting shit for a while. Well, shit, man.
Yeah.
Well, dude, I think we have to have you on again for another hour, because we like that flew by way too fast. And I think there's a lot more that I want to learn from you. But I know I definitely want to learn more about you and what you do. And I want to follow you. And I know a lot of our listeners are going to too. So thank you for coming on, man. But before you leave, like, give yourself the plug, let us know where to find you, what you've got going on, and where we can learn more about you.
Yeah, absolutely. Can I promote the book? Am I allowed to promote the book?
Promote whatever you want, man. Right. Plug it all. Let's go.
So we've promote it all.
Yeah.
So yeah, we do have our book coming out. So Shit You Don't Learn in College is the book that we're coming out with. Short, quick little story. When I went to get the trademark for the book, it was actually, so the U.S. government doesn't want me to publish this book. It was denied by the U.S. Seriously, it was denied by the U.S. Patent and Trade Office for the idea being lewd and offensive to the idea of higher education. Wow. So I got a 12-page rejection letter from the U.S. government telling me that they will never trademark this name.
Best marketing they could have ever given you.
Yeah.
So I took that to a lawyer buddy of mine. We ended up taking it to court. 2-year legal battle ended in the Supreme Court ruling that was unconstitutional, and we got our trademark.
Wow.
That's awesome.
So that's the story of the book, Shit You Don't Learn in College. It's, like I mentioned, we've spent the last 5 years, I've built a multi-million-dollar coaching business, been on the Inc. 5000, best-selling book, travel the world, all that sort of fun jazz. And then we've helped hundreds of other coaches do the same. So we're like, we should probably put, like I just talked about, put this into a system and give it to people, that aren't ready to hire us for coaching. Like, we'll give it to you in a book. So that's what the Shit You Don't Learn in College is. We talk about how to reprogram your brain, how to get clarity on your end goals and destinations, how to execute on those steps, like overcoming fear and failure, criticism, action taking, feedback, all of that sort of stuff. And then tactical skills of communication, sales, leadership, productivity, and overcoming stress and anxiety. All of those things we have in the book. But you can check it out at sydlicbook.com. So Sydlic is Shit You Don't Learn in College, in case you couldn't tell. SYDLIC book.com. So if during the pre-sale, we're giving away over $3,000 worth of programs. So we've got a bunch of programs that we normally sell for a lot of money. And we're giving them away for free for everybody who gets the book at sydlicbook.com. So you can check that out. That's probably the best thing to get people rolling. If you are a coach and you want our help building your business, you can go to zanderfryer.com. I will tell you that we charge a premium, but the reason we do that is because we actually guarantee our results. So, there's a lot of people out there that can't guarantee that they get a result with you. We can, because we've been doing it for so long and we know what we're doing. Unlike a lot of people that, helped one coach get there, and now they're guaranteeing that they'll help them make 7 figures, right? That's adorable.
At the Instagram
so go to
coaches.
zanderfryer.com. Yeah. So you can go to zanderfryer.com, ZANDERFRYER.com to check that stuff out.
Sick, man. That's awesome. I will be for sure buying a copy of the book.
Yeah.
Awesome.
It sounds amazing, especially because the government doesn't want me to have it.
Because the government doesn't want you to have it.
That I feel like that needs to be on like the cover of the government does not want you.
Go to the landing page. It's up there. Don't worry.
Really?
Yes.
Yeah. That's amazing. Yeah. No, I can't wait to get a copy of that. And of course, I want to check out your website and follow you. Are you on Instagram?
I am on Instagram. Yeah.
All right, cool.
At Zander Fryer. Yep.
All right, cool. I'm going to give you a follow there as well.
And also we have our Shit You Don't Learn in College podcast too. So we got the podcast, we got the book, we got the Instagram, we got the website.
That's a lot of long form content and just a little bit of short form. You've got it all, man. This is great. So I'm going to give you a follow. I'm definitely going to buy the book. I really appreciate you coming on. Let's try to we'll talk all off air. We'll get another one scheduled because we've got a lot of other stuff like Bitcoin to talk about. So we'll dive into it, man.
Perfect, brother. Yeah. I dig it.
Well, awesome. Well, Zander, thank you for coming on. Travis, thank you for setting this up. And to everybody who's listening, thank you all for tuning into another episode of the Struggle to Strength podcast. We will see y'all next week.